In 2005, a video began circulating among U.S. forces in Iraq that nobody could explain. It showed an American soldier crossing an open street and then dropping. No explosion, no warning, just a man walking, a single shot, and then nothing. The shooter called himself Juba, and over the next 2 years, more video followed. By 2006, Juba wasn't just a name, he was a presence. Marines had to change the way they moved, where they stood, the way they trained, everything. But a sniper you cannot find is a different kind of fear. It doesn't just put you in danger, it gets inside your head and lives there. Every classified resource available was pointed at finding this man, but nobody could find him. Until a Marine rifleman from a unit called Darkhorse, a kid who'd enlisted at 17 with nothing to prove but everything to give, decided to go looking himself. The book is called Darkhorse, Harnessing Hidden Potential in War and Life by former Force Recon Marine Amantangelo A.J. Pasciuti. So, hope I'm pronouncing that right, but he goes by A.J. throughout the book, A.J. Pasciuti. And it's his story of joining the Marine Corps, and it's his memoir of, I believe, over 20 years serving the United States military through the Marines. And like many military memoirs, it tells his story, where he came from, his background, why he enlisted, what kind of spurred him to it, and then his story of being in it. This one is especially good for me because I've just always found that the memoirs of snipers tend to be better. Not to suggest that those aren't good. I've read probably over 100 military memoirs, in particular over the last 20 years with the war in Iraq and war in Afghanistan. But sniper books, you know, maybe it's just because they have to have so much attention to detail. They just tend to be better, more well written. So this is his whole story of being in the Marines. And kind of in order to understand that, a bit of a background, the United States Marine Corps is the smallest branch of the American military. It's also the most demanding to join. Where other branches are built for scale, the Marine Corps is built on a single premise. Every Marine, regardless of their job, is first and foremost a rifleman. Cooks, mechanics, administrators, before anything else, you have to fight. And within that institution, there's a tier that sits above everything else. It's the Marine Scout Snipers. They're not just Marines who shoot well. To even apply for the school, you must be an already qualified infantryman. So the course at Quantico is one of the hardest military schools in existence. It's fieldcraft, learning to move without being detected, hold a position for 18 hours without moving, understanding wind, distances, all that stuff. Attrition runs well above 50%. Most candidates don't finish, as observation kind of becomes the primary skill. By 2003, those men were needed in Iraq. The invasion that toppled Saddam Hussein took 3 weeks. What followed took 20 years. As a conventional resistance collapsed, a new war emerged. We're now fighting in cities, streets, alleyways in Fallujah, Ramadi, Mosul. There's no front lines. There's no traditional men on one side, men on the other side, and you shoot at each other. It's the enemy living among the population. Every doorway is a potential threat. The Marines were sent into the worst of it, and the casualty rates were staggering. Then in 2005, these videos began circulating among U.S. forces. Clean, deliberate footage of American soldiers being shot one at a time from a distance by someone they never saw. The group behind them called themselves Juba. This was the shooter's name, as we come to find out. They understood something that changed the nature of this war, and that's a camera doesn't just document fear, it manufactures it. One video claimed 37 Americans killed. The footage spread across the internet, designed to reach troops before deployment, to reach families at homes, to make every Marine on the Iraqi streets feel exposed in a way nobody in no armor could fix. Most analysts believe Juba was never one man. The name was more of a character, a myth, among a network of insurgent snipers, and you can hunt a man, you cannot hunt a myth. And yet, someone tried. Enter A.J. Pasciuti. Now, he didn't know this at time of enlistment, but he comes to find this out. He enlists at 17 years old, 9 days after 9/11. And so what I like about this book, the story, is like a lot of these people who go on to serve our country post 9/11, is they were inspired by an event. They come from very little. Same with AJ. He was kind of born actually near Silicon Valley area. He gets made fun of in the military for that, but he comes from a broken family. They don't have a lot of resources. He doesn't have a lot going on in his life, and so 9/11 inspires him to join. Through lots of battles with his family, in particular his dad, he ends up getting in. And over 21 years, he becomes a scout sniper, a force recon Marine, receives a Purple Heart, for many of his battles. In particular, it's the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines that he's in, the unit Darkhorse, that goes over there and ends up finding and killing this guy Juba, as you read the story in the book, who is terrorizing Marines. It goes through in detail really that. It talks about how he got into the Marines, as well as pieces of the school itself, including the Scout Sniper School, why it was so difficult to get through there. He goes into the battles too, which it's always hard for me to it's exciting to read books like this, and at the same time you have to remind yourselves that real people are dying. It's kind of like watching a war movie in that sense, but you're reading the book version of it. It's an exciting to read about it, but these are real Americans sacrificing their lives, and this book is just really well written. And it goes into detail about the things that he did in the war in Iraq. And the Marines were the tip of the spear there. If you know anything about the battles in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Marines were the surge. They were boots on the ground. They were the front lines for the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, to be able to operate in these arenas. They had to have Marines storming the city. And that's what makes the Marine Corps so different, is it's often underfunded. Actually, he talks about this towards the end of this book, is I think the Marines actually just recently, as of last year, have stopped Scout Sniper School because of funding reasons, which is crazy because so many famed snipers. I remember one of my favorite books that I read was a book called Dear Mom. I forget the name of the author's name now, but it was about a Marine Scout sniper from back in Vietnam. And there's so many cool stories of Marine Scout snipers, but they're underfunded, but they're all grunts. They're infantrymen. They're the tip of the spear when it comes to fighting wars. And so he goes into all that. I did write down a couple cool things, a couple cool quotes that I liked from this book because I enjoyed. And this one actually comes from the very intro. It says, "Look at a man the way he is, and he only becomes worse. Look at a man as he could be, and he becomes what he should be." I'm glad it was in the intro of the book, because it definitely resonated with what you're reading. His story is essentially about people believing him and giving him second chances when they really shouldn't have, if that makes sense. And I thought about this as a young man. I have a young son myself. Particularly for young men, I'll just speak from my personal experience. You need mentors. You need people who look at you and believe at you and tell you that you can be something, even if you're not even sure if you can yet. A lot of that is his story. That's also true of the military. That's true of the Marine Corps. They take people, they break them down, and then they build them into something. And AJ's whole story is that. He was often physically one of the worst people in his groups. I think he's a terrible swimmer. He talks about that in this book. But he goes through, I believe, over 30 different schools throughout the military, and he's an honor man several times, which is top of the class, or he's in the top % of the class. And it's all because people believed in him. He talks about one guy in general, Gunny Jackson, who just essentially, they kind of fudge a score for him at one point to pass sniper school. And he learns later the reason they did that is because someone did that for Gunny Jackson himself. It's all about passing things down and moving things forward and believing in people. And it's diverse backgrounds. I think Gunny Jackson was a black dude from Georgia or something like that. And they're talking about a white kid from Silicon Valley. And that's, I don't know, it's just cool, the military, the way men inspire other men to be something. Another quote that I wrote down towards the end that I liked, and I thought it was just prescient for today's times, is "Leaders do not convince people they are sick and then present themselves as the cure. That's not leadership. That's manipulation." That resonated with me a lot in a lot of ways. One, I think politics in general, all of it, left, right, all of the whole dog and pony show is convincing people that we're sick and then they're going to fix us. That's not leadership. That's why I think politics is horrible. You read about it in these kinds of books and how much the government gets in the way of these guys actually operating on their job. But even the military itself, general leadership, that is manipulation. If you got to inspire people. That's what real manipulation or real leadership is. Telling people that they're here, I've got the cure for all your ails. That's manipulation. So anyway, really liked this book. I think you should read it if you're into these types of book. It's a memoir, leadership type book. That's Darkhorse by AJ Pasciuti with Neil McGinnis as his co-author. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the comments.